Operations with absolute value, problem type 2. Okay, so absolute value, if you haven't watched the video, I know we did make one on just basic absolute value. Absolute value has to do with the number of spaces away, usually from 0. Not always from 0, but usually that's what we're talking about. So if I'm looking at the number, so if I'm looking at a basic number line here, and I have 0, and I have 1, 2, 3, 4, and I'm going to put 4 here. And then I have 1, 2, 3, 4, and I'm going to put -4. So if I go to 4, I went 4 spaces away. If I go to -4, I know it's -4, but all we do is count from this 0. How many spaces did I move? 1, 2, 3, 4. So 4 or -4, they're 4 spaces away. One's just going right, one's going left. When I'm talking about absolute value, I'm not caring so much about positive and negative. I just want to know how many spaces did I move away from 0. That's all absolute value means. Okay. And I'm going to erase. Oh, that's a small eraser. Let me make that a little better. Boop. Oh, I made it really small again. What did I do? Trials and tribulations of erasers. All right, there we go. Okay, so I'm going to move this toolkit over here, and I'm going to click back on pen. So when they give us this, and this one's a little bit more complex, so we have a couple absolute values in here. And I'm going to change my colors real quick. So we have, these are absolute value marks. When you see these kind of tall lines here, they don't mean 1, they mean absolute value. And you can tell on here, they're really good about making it a little taller than the number and a little come down a little lower than the number. We also have a secondary pair of absolute value marks out here. So we have to do absolute value, and then we have to do absolute value again. So let's go ahead and go back in here. So if I have the absolute value of -5, remember what I'm saying is if I go to -5 on the number line, so here's 0 and here's -5, I'm going to go left 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I know it's -5, but I only want to know how many spaces did I move. I moved 5 spaces. This minus sign, I know it's in between some absolute values, but it's kind of in between two different pieces of absolute value. It's actually still stays negative on the outside because it looks like, oh, it could be in between these two, but that's not how it works. There's these two for the 5, and then it's closed. We have negative, and then another one opens and closes. So be careful about that one. I don't want you to drop that negative way just because you feel like it's in between. All right, so now we have 7 minus 12. So 7 minus 12, we get -5 again. So here, I'm going to write it down here. So we get -5 again like this. And then we also have these bigger ones that I'm going to bring down like this. I'll write it like that so you can see it doesn't continue from that one. All right, so the way I got -5 with this one, it was 7 minus 12. So I didn't get rid of my absolute value signs, if you notice. All I did was do the math inside the absolute value. So before you can take absolute value, you have to get it down to one number, all right? So we have 5 minus, we already know the absolute value of -5 is 5. And I'm going to put, so I'm bringing down these big ones here because we have to take the absolute value of the whole thing at the end. So now we have 5 minus 5, and we get 0. And we still have to do the absolute value. Well, the absolute value of 0 is, in fact, 0. Okay? So we're just going to work through this one. And it's not terribly crazy. It's just making sure that we're following the rules on this one. All right, so we have 8 minus 9, and we're taking the absolute value, minus the absolute value of 4. So 8 minus 9. So if I take 8 away from 9, well, I have -1 there. I need to bring my absolute values down because remember, I have to get it down to one number before I take my absolute value. Minus, I can take the absolute value 4. It's already one number. So if I have 0 on the number line and I want to count over here to 4, I go 1, 2, 3, 4. I moved 4 spaces. So that's a 4. So we can do the same thing for -1 here. If I have 0 and I want to go left to -1, I only have to go one spot over. So 1 minus 4. And now this one doesn't have absolute value signs on the outside like the last one did. Now that all the absolute value is gone, we just do this like normal. 1 minus 4 is -3. So it's okay to have a negative answer at the end here, as long as, because this one didn't have these great big absolute value on the outside. So once we deal with all the absolute value, after you deal with it, it keeps dropping away, and then we get to just the end, and we can see what our answer is. All right, so we're good to go. Next one. I'm going to do the next one here in red. All right, so this one we have 3, the absolute value 3, minus the absolute value of 9 minus 11. All right, so we have the absolute value of 3. So this one's just kind of a basic one. It's already one number. I can just bring it down as 3. Again, I know if I have 0 and I want to get to 3, I have to go over 1, 2, 3 spaces. All right, minus, and I have 9 minus 11. I'm going to bring down my absolute value because I need to do this first. So 9 minus 11 is -2. So I just subtract like normal. All right, so now I can rewrite this without my absolute value sign. But remember, if I have 0 and I want to get over here to -2, -2 is to the left, I go 1, 2, I moved 2 spaces, so that means my absolute value is 2. 3 minus 2, I get 1. So I just have 3 minus 2, and that just gives me 1. All right, so 1, check. All right, one more. Let's do this one in orange. All right, I'm going to write a little smaller on this one. So I have the absolute value of, so the whole thing has an absolute value around it, so we have to be careful on this one. So this is an absolute value sign, minus 14 absolute value, and again, this is another absolute value sign. And then we have a big one on the outside too. All right, so this one, we want to bring down the big one on the outside here. And then we have 13 minus 9. Remember, I need to do this math first, and then I can do the absolute value. So I have 13 minus 9, I have -4. Minus, I can take the absolute value 14. It's just 14. But remember, this minus sign comes down because it's not actually included in any absolute value yet. It's just in between two of them. All right, so now I can do the absolute value of -4, and that's just 4. Whoops, I put the absolute value signs there again, didn't I? That was silly. So just 4 minus 14, absolute value. So now I'm going to do 4 minus 14, and I get -10. But the absolute value of -10 is just 10. Because remember, that's the same thing. 0, I want to get all the way over here to -10. I have to count 10 spaces over. I know it's negative over here, but I'm just counting how many spaces is it away. It's 10 spaces away. Even though it's to the left, it's still only 10 spaces. Whoops. Erasing things. Check. Yay, we're all done with that one.